Hello everybody. Okay, I am going to sit down here and paint. I'm going to try and do the shadow brows, eyeshadow, first coat on the mouth, and a coat of cheeks on this large FG head. So I am just going to bring you along while I'm doing all of that. So I'm going to start with, I've got my picture laying here where it's handy and I can see it. I've mixed up the paint that I'm going to use on this head. I am using the Virginia Livornia French Brow for the eyebrows. I'm using Virginia Livornia's Mauve Eyeshadow for the eyeshadow. I'm using Rose Red from Gildebrief. And I'm using Cheek Tone 2 Tea Rose from Gildebrief. Now, the reason I picked these colors is because they happen to be the handiest vials I could get to mix up today. So they were laying here from before. So I'm going to start by switching glasses here. Let me get this changed out. See if I can get the camera situated here to where everything's in view of the camera as good as I can get it. See if that helps any. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I've got my magic medium on a separate tile here, so it's not running into my paint. My table has a slant here, and my medium has a tendency to run into my paint. So I am basically going to be concentrating on painting this head, and I'm just taking you along with me. I will be demonstrating these exact same techniques in an actual live class in the lady classroom. So I'm just kind of bringing you along while I'm doing this today. Okay, still looks a little bit too greasy. I'm going to get off a little extra of this medium. So basically I'm just going to kind of pretend I'm talking to myself while I'm doing this. Okay, so just a thin coat of medium, not a whole lot here. So I need to run my brush through the medium and then through my eyebrow paint. I want this paint to be really thin, translucent. Don't want much on my brush at one time. So just a very thin coat of paint. Okay, now this particular eyebrow that I'm painting right now is this one. And remember, I also have the papers here. If I can find it here, hold on. Let me see if I can grab it. I think it's this one. Right here was where I made all of my lines on there. So I'm going to lay that here where I can see it. And then I'm also going to lay the color picture down. Now you're going to notice these eyebrows come very close into the nose. So I'm going to glance back and forth between my colored picture and my black and white drawing with the lines on it. So I'm going to place dots on here. So I've got like a connect the dot type situation. So this very first one lines up right about here. It's almost all the way into the nostril, even up with the nostril. Then this very end one, I don't think I better put the last dot on first. I better work my way over there so I get the arch correct. So I'm sitting here staring right at my picture, trying to follow the arch and curve of the shadow brow. And okay, when I look at this, I can see exactly where the end of my eyebrow should end up. It should be just above the outer corner of the eye and about that far away from it. Okay. So there's what I've got for my dots. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do, hold on a minute, I got too much stuff in the way here. I'm going to go ahead and do the dots on this side and try and match the two up. So this one also is almost all the way even with the nostril. So it should be about right there. And I'm going to start following my brow bone across there and end up right about out here. Now, what I'm noticing is my dots on the left side as I'm looking at it, they're a little bit higher than the ones on the right. So now when I go to fill in that eyebrow area, excuse me, when I go to fill in that eyebrow area, I'm going to fill in from the bottom side of the dots, and this one's a little bit lower, so I'm going to fill in from the top side of the dots and hope that they kind of match up when I get done. So I'm going to take my medium area brush, same one I just put the dots on with, and I'm going to connect the dots, just making short little sweeping strokes. Connecting from one dot to another. Okay, that got me across that one. Now let me fill this one in. Now this one was the one that was too high, so I'm going to kind of fill in from the bottom and use those dots as the top of my shadow brow. Normally, if I have it in the right place, I'm going right through the middle, but since I'm trying to adjust it down a little bit lower, I'm going to be down below those dots. Okay, now these two eyebrows need a lot of work, but I'm pretty close to where I want to be. So now I'm going to start with my medium square shader, and I'm going to start sweeping these eyebrows to smooth them out, get the paint really even and smooth. If your very first coat of shadow brow does not go on correctly, none of your other coats will either. The China paint is translucent, and any mistakes you make in the first coat are going to show through all the way to the end. You cannot cover your mistakes. This paint is translucent and will show everything in the previous coats. Okay, so I've got it. I've got them swept pretty thin, pretty smooth. Now I'm going to start shaping them. So now I'm going to take my small square shader, and like this area right here is too thick, so I'm going to thin that out, draw it down, and then wipe off the excess. I want to make my fine point here on the end, but first I've got to get the exact length I want, and it needs to end in a point. So I'm actually going to pull down from this side, pull down from this side, and then blunt off the end. Okay, so that's about what I want right there. Now I'm a little bit thick right here, so I'm going to peel off a little bit of the paint right here. Again, draw this out into a fine point, because if you notice on this technique sheet, these eyebrows have an extremely fine point. Run it along the bottom edge here a little bit to thin it up. Take a little bit off from the end because that might be extended out too far now. And then sit back and take a look at it. Okay, now that's looking pretty good, pretty much what I want. I just want to thin my paint down a little bit more. So I'm going to go back to my medium square shader and just take a little bit of the paint off because I want this to be really light. You barely see a shadow brow underneath this one. So I don't want to have too much depth of color here. So I'm going to thin that down. And then still want my line a little bit thinner here. Okay, I'm removing any lint that's falling out of my brush as I'm doing this. Okay, so this one is the one, let me look here. I want this corner right here to dip down a little bit more. So I'm going to run my dry brush right along the edge there, and then from the bottom, peel off the extra, make a fine point. And right there's pretty much what I want for that one. Now, to get the second one to match, okay, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to start by sweeping over this to get it really smooth. All the excess paint removed so I don't make a big smudgy mess when I'm trying to shape it. Okay, now I want to go back to my small square shader and then get it shaped here. I'm a little bit too thick here, so I'm going to thin it down some, pull it out into a sharp point, blot off the end. Then a little bit thick right in here, so I'm going to peel some off from the bottom. And I'm also going to run this along the top edge here. Okay, let's see how the two match. That actually, I think, looks pretty good. Oop, I got a big long hair that just flipped out of my square shader. Okay, now that will give me just a light shadow brow to follow in the next firing when I go to add the hairs. Okay, so there's my shadow brow for this time. Now I'm going to go ahead. Okay, wait a minute. One more thing I see is one shadow brow is a little bit darker than the other. So I'm going to lighten the darker one instead of trying to add more paint to the other side. I'm trying to take off a little bit more paint on this side so it's a little bit lighter. Okay, there's still a little bit of difference, but I'm going to call it good. And just let me look at this compared to my picture, my drawing, and I think I'm in the right place. Might be just a hair low right in here. So I'm going to make it just a little bit thinner right there. Okay. Going to call them good. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to shadow brow. I'm going to use my same medium area brush. I'm going to apply a dab of, okay, hold on. Now when I went to apply the eyeshadow, that's when I noticed this area right here is too low. It's hanging down a little bit too low, so I've got to raise that up. So again, I'm just going to run my square shader underneath it, and that will raise up that distance just a little bit, you know, from here up. So I'm just plain making the shadow brow thinner and taking some off the bottom so it's not hanging down quite as far. Okay, now on to the eyeshadow. So I'm going to add a dab of, now I can't remember if I've washed out my brush before, so I better wash it out again. Okay, so I'm going to add a dab of lavender shadow right in the center of each eye, like so. Now I need to find my medium blender. This is an old Bell medium blender, but Filbert from Sealy's will work. There's quite a few different brushes that are about the same thing. This one happens to be the handiest right now. So then I'm going to blend my eyeshadow in. Just a very thin, light coat. Don't need much paint on there. Still have the medium on there from when I applied the shadow brows. So it's just enough medium to get it to flow. And I'm going to blend that in. Remember, not much paint on there. Okay, so still blending the eyeshadow. Okay, I've got a little bit more on this side than I do the other side, so I need to blend a little bit of it off. Because I don't want to add any more. I just want to make it match the other one. Because I just want a very thin, light coat. Okay, there's the eyeshadow. Now, I'm going to rinse my brush out again. blot it off. And now I'm going to go into the rose red. Still using the medium area brush. Just putting very thin amount of paint on here, streaking it out across the tile so it blends well. I'm going to add my tear ducts. Need a little bit more paint. And they are kind of like just a laid down triangle here. Going into the corner of the eye here. Okay, so just light little tear ducts. And I'm going to make them a little bit bigger so they show up just a little bit more. Okay, there's the two tear ducts. Now, same thing, I'm going to do the nostrils. Need to reload and add a little bit more paint. Okay. First coat on the nostrils. Just a very thin coat. I'm going to make them just a little bit bigger. And I need to add just a little bit more on this side of this one. They're a little crooked. Okay, then if I have too much paint in there and they need to be blotted, I will just take my small little stippler. These are actually pretty smooth, but it won't hurt to go over them just a little bit. So I'm going to blot a little bit of that extra paint off, which kind of extends it out a little bit. So then I'm going to take my yellow tipped cleanup brush, which is the SBR 19 lip brush from Sealy's. This is the one I save strictly as my cleanup brush. So I just dip it in water and take paint off where I need to. So I'm just smoothing this edge here. Okay. Extra is off of the nostrils. Okay, now the mouth. I'm going to go back with the rose red. I'm going to look at my line diagram here. And the peak of this lip is off just a little bit to the side of the nostrils, a little bit to the inside of the nostril. So I'm going to put a dot there for that peak, and then this one would be right here. And then, like I say, watching my drawing here, the outside corner of the mouth is going to be out here almost even with the outside edge of the nose, like so. And then when I go to do, okay, the bottom lip is going to run about right here and right here. Okay, so can you see what I've done? I've put some little dots on there to kind of give me a guideline as to where I'm going to fill in this mouth. So now I'm going to take and connect the dots again. So I'm going to go from that outside corner. Another dot I could have put in there would have been the dip right in between the two peaks. And I'm going to head back down to this corner. Okay, then I'm going to fill in across there. So see, this is what I'm doing so far. Need a little bit more medium on my brush so the paint will flow a little bit better. Okay, let me turn it around and look at it this way. I need to add a little bit of paint right in here. Okay, I need a little bit more right up here. Okay, then I'm going to fill in across here. Okay. Again, I'm looking at my picture. And then I want to see here, okay, the lower lip, the outside edge of it pretty well matches up with the center of the tear duct. So I'm going to bring this out like this. And this out like this. Okay, now actually my dots are a little bit too low. There's some of the lip molding that's showing here, and I don't have enough showing, so I'm not matching my picture. So I need to raise the bottom of this lip up just a little bit. I need a little bit more of the lip modeling that doesn't have paint on it, because I can see the shadow of it in the picture. Okay, probably about that size right there. Now let me fill this in just to get an idea of what this looks like, because I still might want to take it up a little bit more. I think what I actually want to do is widen the sides out. Oops, too much paint on my brush. I want to widen the sides out a little bit, so then it doesn't seem so fat in the middle, and it has more of a gradual way that it's going to the outside. More like that. Okay, now I've got my basic mouth shape on there. Now I want to get it smooth. So I'm actually going to take a clean finger, nothing on it, and I'm going to blot that extra paint off of there. Now this is when I come in with the small stippler. And I totally smooth out my paint. So everything is just one smooth, even coat in the correct shape. Okay, so I'm just carefully blotting, smoothing the paint around. This little stippler just sucks up all that extra paint, and I blot it off on my lint-free towel. This is an old diaper, old cloth diaper, not a disposable one. Okay, so I'm getting that smooth. Okay, I want to get my corners smoothed out here. Now the corners of my mouth turn up just a little bit. I'm going to take my yellow tip brush and just take off a little bit of extra paint that I had there. And right there. Okay. There is the first coat on my mouth. Okay, the only thing left to do is a coat of cheeks. Okay, so I'm going to apply my medium. Now remember, I had no medium on the nostrils, the mouth. The tear ducts had some medium on it from when I did the shadow brow and the eyeshadow. So there was a little bit of medium left in that corner then. But otherwise the mouth I wanted no medium on, or for the tear ducts. But you have to have medium when you're working on the eyeshadow and the shadow brow. Okay, so just trying to apply a smooth coat of medium. To the cheek area without hitting anything else that is wet. Okay, so then I have Tea Rose Cheek Tone 2 of Karen Buttagee's Gilda Brief paint mixed up over here. So I'm going to take and just put a dab of paint in the center of the cheek. Like so. Okay, now I'm going to use a China mop here. I have Sealy's one laying here, and then I also have this Expressions China mop. So I'm going to blend the little dab of cheek paint that I put there and blend that out on the cheek. Now I do not want my cheeks going real close to my eye area, my nose, and my mouth. I want to keep it back out in the center of the cheek. Do not get your cheeks too close to your features. If you notice in the colored picture, there's a whole lot of area here where that cheek color is not coming close to the rest of your features. So now this is just a light first coat. Like so. I'll do the other one and then make sure they match. So I'm just starting with a dot of paint in the center. Blending it out, but not letting it get too carried away. Don't let it keep spreading and spreading until you've got your paint up against your features. So the key to that is very small amounts of paint at one time with multiple firings. You need to build your China paint up in layers. You cannot get this as dark as you want it in one or two coats without it just looking like paint sitting on top of a head. You know, if you want it to all flow and blend together, it has to be in light coats multiple times, firing in between each coat. Okay, almost got it. Try not to overwork your cheeks any more than you have to, or they will become ruddy looking on you, and they'll take on an orangish tint no matter what color paint you used. Okay, that is all I want. This time is just an extremely light coat. This is just my starter coat to build on. Okay, that is it for the first firing on this large bell FG head. Okay, see y'all soon. Bye.